But thank you very much for joining us today. We know that the due date is right around the corner, so we want to make sure to provide as many training opportunities as we can before the end of January. Since January 31st, all of the annual reports will be due to our office. So before we get started, I just want to do a couple of housekeeping items. This webinar will probably be a little bit fast-paced. We are going to stop after each section to take notes or to take questions and comments on those sections, and we will also have an opportunity for questions at the end. So Rachel did post in the chat that it might be helpful for you to have the annual report up on your screen if you have two screens available. If not, we will be sharing a lot of screenshots from the annual report, and we will also be showing the annual report tool that we released last week in between each module. So you will get an opportunity to see it on the screen if you don't have the capability of putting it up while listening to this webinar. All right, next slide. So again, the due date for the annual report is January 31st of 2023. If you can believe it, we are in the next calendar year. So we would like you to email your program specialist assigned to your agency, as well as the LIHWAP reports email, just like you do for the quarterly reports. On this slide, you will see where the instructions can be found and the report itself. So you can go back if you haven't pulled those up yourself yet. All right, next slide. We do have some scheduled office hours coming up the rest of this month. We have 4 more opportunities, and that is a little bit more of one-on-one time. We have limited, I think, to about 14 grant recipient agencies at a time. So you can get a lot of your questions answered then if you don't get them answered at today's webinar. So please sign up for those if you're able to. All right, so the first section is just the recipient information. It's very basic with your required information, the fiscal year, which is 2022 for this report, your name, contact information, and so forth. And then there is this is actually, you want to make sure that the person filling out this information is the person filling out the report. It does not need to be your designated official. And then there is the signature box at the bottom. If the Excel signature feature does not work or you cannot figure it out, then you can just type your name in the box and we will take that as a signature. All right, so we're going to jump into the first module, which is a use of funds report. And this is the report for all of the financial information for 2022. Next slide. So as you probably are aware, you have to be tracking the financial award amounts separately. So we have the Consolidated Appropriations Act funding as well as the American Rescue Act. So throughout the financial document on the first tab of the report, you will be reporting individually on those 2 funding sources throughout the document. So as you see on this slide, the first section, this is really coming out of your implementation plan. This is your actual grant award at the top, and then your estimated numbers. And these should be coming out of the implementation plan that was approved. The only difference is that on your implementation plan, you submitted that in percentages of your total award. On this, we're asking you to convert that percentage to actual numeric dollar values. So you'll put in those amounts into this section. As a note, for tribal grant recipients, if you received a supplement on September 29th of last year, you do not want to include that in the report. You're only including the original amount of your award since this is fiscal year 2022. Another note is that the number 6 says actual admin cost at 15%, and that's an auto-calculated amount. And that's just to help us on the back end make sure that the estimated amounts are not exceeding the allowable 15% admin costs. All right, next slide. So this section, you're going to start putting in the household benefit funds in the 3 areas that you report on for service amounts. So you'll be putting your amounts based on restoration of services, so how much money you spent to restore someone's water services. The second one is prevention of disconnection of funds. So for those that you had arrearages and you're paying those arrearage amounts in order to prevent a disconnection. And then the last one is reduction of rates charged. So that is the amount that you put for current bills. So any current bills you're going to report on the last one. So as you see, there are two separate ways that we're asking for this. We're asking this for actual funds obligated and actual funds expended for each of these categories. So the obligation are funds you made a definite commitment to pay for goods and services in each of the categories through the September 30th last year date. Now, your obligation definition might vary from grant recipient to grant recipient, so please follow your obligation definition and report it there. This is our very kind of brief overview of what obligation means in our office. For those of you who do not obligate funds, meaning you just spend against your budget and you haven't obligated, you want to make sure the obligation fund amount that you put in is just the same as your actual funds expended. So that's only if you do not obligate funds. So the funding expended will be the actual amount that you spent in each of those categories for benefits through September 30th, 2022. All right, next slide. Now we're asking you to report that same information, the same amount that you're spending in benefits, but in a different way on this slide. So this slide is asking you to report it by service type. So you're going to report if it was water or wastewater services, multiple water services, or other water services. And a couple things to note on this one is that for the multiple services that include water and other non-water services, that might be that you spent funds prior to our May 4th date on trash, for example. So it would be put into that area. As of May 4th, 2022, we released guidance that those types of services were not an allowable cost. So after that May 4th date, you shouldn't have spent any money on non-water services, but it was allowable in some of the areas of 2022. So you will see that language. Most of you are probably reporting the majority of your funds in the water and or wastewater section, which is the first one. And then the other two categories are probably going to see less funds. The last one, which is other water services, this is referring to if you had an approved other type of service in your implementation plan. This might have been for emergency water bottle services or septic cleaning as a public act. Any of the funds that were reported into those sections will need to be explained through your implementation plan and approved. So please reach out to your program specialist if you have any concern about reporting in that area. One of the other things to note is that if you have made a payment for water or wastewater and it might have had some other areas, some other services that you weren't able to differentiate because their arrearages don't have itemized listings out, you'll report that in the water and or wastewater section, the number 1, which is the primary use of the fund date. So if there were non-itemized services you're not able to differentiate, please report them in section 1. All right, next slide. So the last section for the financial information is reporting on the 3 other areas or buckets of the budget. So the first one is outreach and eligibility and intake budget. The second one is administration for the recipient. And the third one is administration for the subrecipients if applicable. So you are reporting 3 different ways for this one. The first way is the estimated funding allocations, and this should come out of your implementation plan. So it will be kind of a repetition of that first section of the financial report. The second one is the obligation area. So again, if you do not obligate, then report the same amount that you would report as an expended cost. And the third way we're asking you to report on it is funding expended. So as a reminder, the administration for the recipient and the administration for the subrecipient cannot exceed 15% of the total award. All right, next slide. So then we do have a section in here for remarks at the end of the financial section, and that's if you have any notes or explanations needed for your data. So please feel free to use that for any additional information you want to provide to our office. All right, so a few takeaways. The financial section, you are reporting on that separately for the Consolidated Appropriations Act and the American Rescue Plan Act. For any of the things that are estimated award amounts, please refer to your implementation plan and use your percentages in that area and make them numeric dollar values. If you need a copy of your approved implementation plan, please feel free to reach out to your program specialist in order to get that. The grant amounts in section 1 should match the estimated funding allocations in section 3. And when I pull up the report, I'll show you what I mean by that. The amounts of totals entered in this section should never exceed your total award. So hopefully the tool that we provided last week will actually help check some of those, make sure you're not going over the actual amount that you were awarded. And then any areas that are grayed out in the background should be left blank, and you should not put any values into those cells. All right, so I'm going to stop there and share the tool before we take any questions on this particular category. All right, so hopefully you all can see the tool. So again, this was released via email and is on our website last week. So this is a new tool. And what we wanted to do is we took feedback from our last training webinar that we did in December and created this tool in order to start allow for some checks in place, because we know working off of an Excel spreadsheet, there can be errors. So we want to make sure to try to avoid some of those on the front end, so we don't have to go back and forth with you and your reports, and it'll hopefully help you with the collection and submission of this report. So there are some checks. So what you'll see is this is the use of funds tab, and then the last tab on this tool are the checks. And you'll it's probably really small. Let me make this bigger. So you'll see the top are the use of funds checks. And so it will correspond with everything in this tab, use of funds. And just to make it clear, this tool is completely optional. It is not required. It's just there to help you, and hopefully it will make it easier for the submission of the report. So when I was talking about the estimated amounts here, they should actually match the estimated amounts down below in section 3. So I can try and put some fake numbers in here so to show you what I mean. Now, again, these are probably very low numbers, just fake ones. All right, so I put these numbers in, and then below for the outreach and administration, I'm going to put these same numbers in to make sure that the checks are in place. And I'll actually do one that is not the same so you can see how that works as well. All right, so going down below to the, I should remember what I put in, 152. All right, so this is for the outreach budget. I put the same amount in. And then for the ones below, I will do a different amount and see if it catches it. All right, so then we'll go to the checks, and you'll see that it now says does not check. Then you could read the notes and explanation and go back to the first tab to see what happened and adjust those numbers. All right, so we have checks in place for multiple other areas in this, for example, to make sure that the administrative funds are not exceeding 15%. We have checks in here that make sure that the actual benefit amounts do not exceed the total award amount, and so forth. So we do have a few checks in place here as you fill out this entire spreadsheet to try to make sure to avoid any errors. So in order to not go through every single check, because I know we're limited on time today, I'm going to stop there. So I just wanted to explain a little bit of how the checks work and open it up for any questions on the use of funds section. looking in the chat. I don't see any questions coming in the chat. If you have any questions, please take yourself off mute and we can go from there. All right, so not seeing anyone. We will open it up for questions at the end. So if you do have something on the section later on, feel free to unmute yourself and we will go back to the use of funds area. So yes, I do see something in the chat. If you have not started using either the CAA funds or even ARP funds or anything like that prior to the September 30th, 2022, you will be putting in zero amounts. And we did want to also add that we are going to be releasing some guidance about using the Consolidated Appropriations Act funding first before ARP funds, but please talk to your program specialist about that. But again, if you did not give out any benefits in fiscal year 2022, then you would be putting blank on any of those sections. All right, so now we will go to the next section, which is the household report. And the household report I kind of like to refer to as like the demographic report. This is where you're putting information about any of the applicants and assisted households members that have applied and received benefits through the LIHWAP program. So we can go ahead and get started. All right, so the first section is just reporting the number of households in an unduplicated amount. So the unduplicated means a household is only counted once. So even if they applied for or received assistance multiple times, maybe you allowed them to receive assistance for 1 month and then they got behind on bills and they got assistance again later on in fiscal year 2022, you're still only reporting them one time in this section. So we have 3 ways that we're asking you to give us numbers. The first one is household applicants. That's the individual that applied for assistance. Then we have the second is the households that were given benefits or were assisted. So the first one is just the applicants and the second one is if they were assisted. So for example, if you accepted applications in 2022, but you did not distribute benefits to them until 2023, you'll report those households in number 1 and you'll report 0 in number 2. And the third category is total waitlisted households for non-availability of funds. So this is only applying probably to those who ran out of funds, who expended their entire award prior to the close of fiscal year 2022. So we know that only applies to a handful of grant recipients. So that's where you'll report if you have households that have applied, but you cannot serve them because you have no more funds available. All right, next slide. So this slide is reporting unduplicated amount per category, very similar to how you are doing it in the quarterly reports. So you're actually doing unduplicated per each type of assistance, meaning restoration of services, you're reporting the unduplicated amount there. So even if the household received payments twice because they were disconnected twice that year, you're only reporting on them one time. Same thing with prevention of disconnection of services, you're reporting the unduplicated amount for that section. And for the third one is reduction of current rates charged, those that you assisted with their current bills, you're only reporting on them once. So this is similar to what you've done in the quarterly report, but we do have a little bit of an example of how the unduplication works per category in the next slide. So as you can see, we have 5 different type of household scenarios here. Household 1 is received restoration of services and reduction of rates charged, meaning that they were disconnected from services, but they also received a payment for their current bills. Household 2 received a prevention of disconnection payment, meaning they received a payment paying their arrearages. Household C applied for a restoration of services benefit, but did not receive any assistance. Household D is received prevention of disconnection and reduction of rates charged, meaning you paid their arrearages and their current bill. And household E is receives reduction of rates charged twice, once in November and once in February. So that is they got a payment for current bills twice in that fiscal year. So as you can see, household A is reported twice as in the unduplicated count. So unduplicated for section 1 and unduplicated for section 2. Another example is household C that applied for restoration but did not receive a benefit. They're not reported at all because they did not receive any benefits during that year. The other one to acknowledge is household E that received 2 payments, but it was in the same category, so they're only reported once in that section. So those are examples of how you're going to report in those areas. All right, next section. Okay, so now we're getting into some of the demographic information, and this is a required portion for this household report for this year. We will look at some sections below that were only optional for this year, but this particular one was required. And this is reporting on the number of assisted households, but by poverty interval. And you're probably familiar with this because this is very similar to how you would be reporting in LIHWAP over the years. And again, this is unduplicated in those areas, and you're reporting on them in the poverty levels as you see below. Now, grant recipients must include households that were categorically eligible for LIHWAP in this section. So that is an area when they might have been eligible because they received a LIHEAP benefit. That's where you still needed to know what their annual income was, even though you weren't checking for documentation for that income in order to report them into this section. Now, if the income and household size changes over the course of the year, if you have multiple levels of reported income on the number of benefits from a household, use the information from the initial determination of benefits. So if you received information later on, maybe because they were applying for a different service, please use the information at the beginning when they processed their application or applied for their application for LIHWAP in order to determine if they were eligible at that time. Let me see if I have any other notes to add for this section. Oh, the other thing to note is that these are the federal poverty guidelines. So if you are using state median income, you will have to convert those to match what the federal poverty guideline levels are. So it might help to have on another screen available kind of that which under 75% equals which state median income percentage for your area, because obviously it depends state by state. All right, next section. So this is also a required area for this for this year, and this is the reporting on assisted households by vulnerable population. So we have 3 different vulnerable populations: if they're 60 years or older, if they are disabled, if they have if a household has a child under the ages of 5, and then we have a section for any of them. So this is asking you to report unduplicated households served by assistance type. So the assistance type meaning the restoration of services, prevention of disconnection, reduction of current rates charged, and then the last one is any type of LIHWAP assistance. So a household should be included in this section if at least one member of the household falls into this category. So if you have a household that does not fall into any of this area, that they don't have anyone who is a senior or disabled, or a young child, they are not reported in this area at all. So this is only if they fall into any of these categories. So if you have a different definition of what might be a senior or please use our definition of 60 years or older to make it consistent throughout the entire reporting process. Let's see if I have any other notes to read from this one. The only thing is on D is unduplicated, meaning that you're not adding A, B, and C together. So if a household has any amount, any person who falls into these categories, you're reporting that household once. You're not reporting if they have someone who is elderly and disabled, they're still only captured one time under section D. All right, I think that's all the notes. Oh, and here is an example for how this works. So household A received restoration of services. Household A has 4 members. a 36-year-old, a 29-year-old, a 67-year-old, and a 72-year-old who's also disabled. And so if you look below, you can see how they're reported on this one. So they received restoration of services, meaning that they were disconnected because they have elderly members in the household. They actually have 2 elderly members according to our definition, but they're only reported one time. They have 1 disabled household member, so they're reporting one time under the disabled section, and they don't have any children under the age of 5, so they're not reported at all in that area. But because they have at least 1 in the first 2 categories, they're reported one time on section D, so it's unduplicated. And as you can see, that's how it works for going below. I can read out household B. They received a prevention of disconnection and a reduction of rates charged, so 2 different services. They have 4 members, a 2-year-old who's disabled, a 4-year-old, a 27-year-old, and another 27-year-old. So two children under the age of 5 and 1 disabled. So as you can see, they're reported under both prevention of disconnection and reduction of rates charged since they receive both of those services. But when you go below to any type of LIHWAP assistance, which is section 4, it's unduplicated of all of that. So I hope that helps. If you need more clarification, please come to our office hours to kind of give out your different scenarios for this area. All right, next slide. Now we get into the households assisted for applicants by race and ethnicity. So this section was a optional section for this fiscal year, but if you do have any of this information, even if it's only partial for the fiscal year, please include what you have and make a remark that lets us know that you might have only had this information for 6 months or so, but we want to capture as much of it as we can. So we have the ethnicity and race, and these are the types that are listed below. We do have sections that say unknown and not reported for both of these areas. So that means if you do not collect this information, you could put all of your applicants into that unknown or not reported for this fiscal year. You do not have to go back and try to determine ethnicity or race, only if you collected this information. And these numbers should be unduplicated, so you don't want to put them into multiple categories. If there is a section for multi-race for the racial portion. So if they have selected more than one race, 2 or more of the above, you can put them into that category, but it is unduplicated. And just to note that rows 4 and 9, which is applicants served under both areas, should match each other. And that is one of the checks that you will see on the Excel spreadsheet to make sure that they match. And again, this is optional. So hopefully if you do collect any of this information though, please report it. All right, next slide. So again, we have another optional section for this fiscal year, and this is applicants by gender. So we have self-identified male, self-identified female, other, unknown, or not reported. Again, these numbers should be unduplicated, and if you did not collect this information, please report all of them under the unknown and not reported for this year. How it says total auto-calculated, that will calculate 1 through 4 for you. Next slide. Now we have housing type, and this is basically in different categories that we added, and this was optional for this year, but we're asking that hopefully if you have this information, you do provide what you have. Again, we do have an unknown or not reported section, just like the other 2, but you can put all of your applicants in there. We have 4 different types of definition or housing types. We have own their home or own their facility, rent, but with separately billed utilities, or rent with utilities included in their rental fee, or other. So if you did not collect this information, please report all of them under 5, which is unknown or not reported. And again, this will auto-calculate. All right, so we have the same areas, but we for race, ethnicity, and gender, but this is for all of the household members. So this is optional for fiscal year 2022, and it will be required for 2023, like the rest of them. It is the same categories as you saw for the assisted applicants. It's just for the entire household. So again, this was optional. If you don't have anything, please report it under the unknown or not reported. And as you see on this slide, 4, 9, and 5 should all equal each other if you are reporting on this area. All right. So one of the other things that we have in this area is for the use of funds for non-public water systems or emergency home water systems. So this is also kind of referring into those other water services that you might have been reporting on quarterly reports, or you'll report on the annual report. And again, this should have been approved in your implementation plan. But we do have a few specific services listed below for you to report on if you do these services. If you do something that's different than what is described in 1 and 2, please put that into the third category, which is other, and then please describe below what that other is referring to. If you do put anything into the other section and any numeric value into the other cell and you don't provide a response, we will have to come back and make sure we get that information from you so we can know exactly what it is, what type of service. All right, and then again, like the use of funds section, we have the remarks section, and this is an option for you to write any kind of comments or explanations, further clarification needed of the data that you provided in this section. All right, so a few takeaways. I know that was a lot of information, so a few different takeaways. If you did not collect the data that was optional, meaning race, ethnicity, gender, for all applicants and household members, please report that number under unknown and not reported. Do not leave the section blank, just put all of the people into that section. The total number of households reported in sections 5, 6, and 7 should equal the unduplicated households assisted in section 1. And now on this tool, we do have a check for that to help you with the submission of that. Applicants should be counted in both the sections that ask about household applicants and the section of household members. So your household members should be equal to or exceed your applicants. You might just have served only households of 1, though that's probably pretty rare, but they need to be reported twice. So if you reported an applicant you put 1 for that applicant, that 1 person should also be considered a household member. All right, that was quite a lot of information. So what we'll do is we'll open it up for questions, while I'm going to also share my screen and go over some of the tools, the check, so you can see what I'm referring to. And I know this was fast, so if you have any very specific questions about your data, feel free to please jump on an office hour this week or next week so we can kind of work through some of that specific data question. All right, so as you can see, this is the report that you fill out for household report. And then again, the last tab of this tool are the checks. So right now everything is green. As you can see, there are a lot of checks that we built in for the household report. And a lot of this is referring to making sure that the totals of unduplicated amounts equal the totals of other unduplicated amounts and so forth. But I'll pull out a couple examples. So one example, let's do something that was a required information. So I think most of the top were required. A lot of these are race and ethnicity below. So we'll do some of the poverty levels for restoration of services must equal the total restoration of services in sections 2 as well. So 17 should equal 10C. So I'll go to the report. So line 17. So all of these should equal 10C up here. So let's plug in some numbers. Let's say you did 5 in each just to make it simple. So this should be 25, but let's make it 24 just so you can see that the check will change to not. So as you can see, it says does not check. So I will go back and put this as 25 and then see if it has changed. And now it checks, so they equal each other. Another section that is required. So again, if you are not reporting anything in the, let's say your total number of household applicants assisted, your total unduplicated households assisted, let's say you did 50 for the year. Let's go back down to the ethnicity. Let's say you didn't collect that. Let's say you put 45. Let's see if we have another check. So we have a lot here that says does not check. So if I go back and put 50, let's see if we have checks. So some of them changed, not all of them, but I think it's because household applicants by a housing type. Okay, so I didn't fill out housing type. I only filled out one of the sections. So that's why it does not check. So once you put some number in here, if you haven't filled out all of these below, it will not check. So I can go and put 50 in all of here, see if it is checking now. As you can see, one of them changed, so can I keep going back and forth, and I didn't fill out the rest of them. So as you can see, it will keep changing once you have filled out the rest. All right, let's see. So we just only have one, and so I missed the gender one below. So as you can see, you can keep going through and adjusting your numbers to make sure they check, and it'll alert you. And you can go look at the actual cell number, 52C. I must have missed the 52C one. As I filled it out, so I'll have to go back and see what it is that I didn't. 5C, oh, because this one is, we will look into this to see if I did something wrong. But as you can see, there's a lot of different checks in here, and we will make sure to review all of them to see what is. And Rachel, if you could flag that I might have messed up something on 5C, if we could look at that one to see what I did incorrectly, that would be great. All right, I see a lot of stuff going in the chat, and I haven't been. Oh, it's because I think I opened up the an old version. Okay, so Rachel will make sure that the proper version is shared on the chat because I opened up the old one. All right. I see some questions coming in from the chat. But I will stop sharing to open up to the larger screen to see if there are any questions about the household report. All right, not seeing anything else. We could, if you have any other questions, feel free to put it into the chat and we will get to it at the end. All right. So we are almost done. We only have one more section, and it is a shorter section. So bear with me for another few minutes, and we will move to Module 3. All right, so Module 3 is performance data. So we are looking at impact in Module 3. So we have a few different areas that we're reporting on, and we will get started with the first one, which is water burden targeting. So this was the most, I think, asked about section in our last webinar. So I'm going to try to go a little bit slower, and hopefully we can make it a little bit clearer, and I will be open to answering any questions that you have. So water burden is the proportion of total household income spent on drinking water and or wastewater utility bills during a specific time frame. So we have you have a few different ways that you're reporting on it. You're reporting on pre-water burden and post-water burden of services. You're also reporting on the average water benefit payment by service type. So that I'll show you on the tool itself when I share that at the end. You will be reporting on the average benefit payment for restoration of services, average benefit payment of prevention of disconnection or arrearages, and the average benefit payment from current bills. So I think that was probably clear on our last one, but I think what got a little bit confusing is how you're calculating the water burden. I want to start by saying, if you have a way that you are calculating burden already, which might be based off of your LIHWAP calculation or other types of programming calculation, please continue to calculate your pre and post burdens the way that you have been. And you can also explain that in the remarks section of how you calculated the burden, if it's a little bit different than what we're going to be describing on these webinars, or that's different in the instructions, which we have taken for this webinar to emphasize the instructions we released last year. So I just want to start off by saying that. Another thing I want to have you consider is that some of the pre and post water burden targeting might not be doable with the information that you collected in fiscal year 2022. So I just want to start by saying that if you did not collect the information that's necessary to calculate the burden, we don't want you to report numbers that are not accurate. So we understand that this might have been because of how your systems were set up, or just a misunderstanding of our requirements. And we just don't want you to report in information that's not accurate. So as I just wanted to say that up front before we get into the explanations. All right, so for each assisted household, what you're going to do to calculate the pre-water burden, so that is what their water burden was before you gave them the benefit payment. You divide their water, wastewater bill by their household income, and this will result in a percentage. So for example, if you paid for arrearages that covered 3 months of bills, then you will take their 3 months of their income and divide it by the 3 months of their utility bill. So if you have their annual income, you're going to divide that annual income by 12 to understand what their monthly income is. And then you will do that for 3 months worth, and then you will come up with that percentage. If you do not know the number of months covered by a water bill, do not include it in the calculation. For example, if your arrearages or the disconnection just have past due balance and it does not explain how many months that's covered, or you're not able to figure out the average monthly cost of water for that individual, we don't want you to try to make up a pre-water burden, because you won't be able to divide it by the correct amount of time of their income to make it a valuable number. So do not include them in the calculation, and do not include them when you report on this item. All right, next slide. So the post-water burden is the same type of thing, but you're calculating the water burden after you've given them the service. So for each assisted household, subtract the LIHWAP benefit amount from the household's initial water or wastewater utility bill. Then you divide that result from above by their household income, and this will result in a percentage. So after calculating the burden for each household, you're going to take the average. So again, if you paid their entire bill and you know their entire bill covered a year's worth of water, you're going to divide that by, you paid their entire bill, their post-water burden is actually going to be 0, because you have cleared, they have no more water bill amount for the next month. So that's why also in the report it says, if applicable, if you're paying everything, they don't have a post-water burden. And I'll explain that when I show the report. If you are paying a certain amount of their water bill, let's say you're paying $75 of their water bill and their water bill is $100. So what you're going to do is their remainder is $25. Then you divide that result above by their household income. So you would find out their monthly income, and you would divide that by the 25 to get their burden. So again, ensure that you're using the same time frame. And if you're not able to come up with the time frame, do not include them in the calculation. And since most grant recipients are paying the entirety of the bill for restoration of services and prevention of disconnection, it might not be necessary to do a post-water burden. If their post-water burden would be 0, you wouldn't be reporting that. So I'll show that again. I'll show that on the tool. Or on the report, you'll see why it says if applicable. If you are using a benefit matrix with a maximum benefit amount, you should report a post-water burden. So on the last service area, which is reduction of rates charged, current bills, you're required to do a benefit matrix. And one of the benefit matrix requirements that we've posted in guidance last year was that water burden be taken into consideration in that matrix. So you will be required to report on a post-water burden for those reduction of rates charged. If your system did not calculate the amount of the bill and you're not able to determine that, please contact your program specialist, and so we can determine how you can report on that item, or if you should report at all on that item. All right, next slide. So again, I think I kind of talked through some of this, but this is an example of water burden. So household A has a gross income of $30,000. They apply for rate reduction assistance, meaning current bills. The month they apply, their water bill is $250, and they received $150 in LIHWAP assistance. So if you have all of that information, what you're going to do is you're going to you're going to look at their total income, which is $30,000, to find their monthly income, divide it by 12. Then you know it's $2,500 a monthly income. Their bill is $250, so that means their pre-water burden is 10%, but you're only paying $150 of that $250, which means there's still $100 that they're paying a month. So that means their post-water burden is 4%. So that's how you would calculate that. I think I saw something in the chat. If you are paying the full amount of their current bill, then their post-water burden would be 0. That is correct. All right. Next slide. Okay, and then the last, I think it's the last section in this performance management section is very similar to what you've been reporting on the quarterly reports. And this is the service type by the priority levels. So for each assistance type, please report the number of unduplicated and duplicated households served. So we have two different areas. Only duplicated if it is applicable. If you are only a one lifetime benefit type of grant recipient and are not able to apply and receive service multiple times, then you wouldn't report them in the duplication area. And one thing to note about this is if they received a payment that was for, they were disconnected, but they also received payment for their current bill. And you're paying them in one benefit payment, please report them on the priority payment. So that would be that they were restored water. So if their bill is kind of all in one and you're doing kind of two different services, but you're only making one benefit payment, place them in the priority area, which would be restoration of services for this example. All right, so some key takeaways. Water burden should be reported as a percentage, and a post-water burden average may not be necessary if you have done paid everything for restoration of services and prevention of disconnection. And another thing to kind of note takeaway, if you are not able to calculate the amount of time associated with that benefit payment, please do not try to calculate a water burden and report on that area. So I think those are kind of the major takeaways. And I will share my screen of the tool itself. All right, so this one is a little easier. There's only 3 different checks, and this is really referring to the total unduplicated households in the performance section must match the total unduplicated households reported in the household report. So for example, let's go to 15B.
Mary, just so you know, you're not sharing your screen right now.
Oh, well, thank you for letting me know. Okay, let me start over. So there are 3 different checks for the household report or for the performance measures, and they're all referring to making sure that your unduplicated amounts match your unduplicated amounts reported in your household report. So for example, 15B must equal 10C from your household report. So I'm going to go back here onto the performance measures, and 15C, make sure I did that, 15B. So that's auto-calculated, so it's going to be all of these. So let's say the total is 15. So 15 must equal 10C. So right now I have 10C listed as 25, so hopefully it says it doesn't check, and it does not. So let's move this to 15 and see if we get a check, and we do. So there are only 3 different checks. The reason why there are only 3 different checks is that a lot of these other data points are going to be really dependent on your situation. There's no way for us to make a check on your average water benefit payment or your burden targeting. So we really can only check the unduplicated amounts versus your household report. And again, we know that the water burden might vary greatly from grant recipient to grant recipient, depending on how your system was set up or how the bills are laid out, if they're itemized, or if there's time frames associated with those bills. So there's nothing that we can check in this area. So we're only checking unduplicated versus household report. So hopefully that explained some of the water burden. Hopefully it was a little clearer than last time. But I'd love to take questions and answer anything that you have.
Mary, there's one question in the chat about the water burden.
Can you read it out loud? I'm not able to kind of see it on my side for some reason.
Yes, so I think so. This is from Richard Giddings. I think it's in reference to.
Oh, I see it. Okay.
Earlier, yes.
So yes, I think I answered that while I was explaining. But yes, if your benefit matrix pays the full amount of current bills, then the water burden would be 0, and you can report it as 0 for that section. Let's see. I do see. Okay, Kelia, I think you have your hand up.
Yes. And thank you. My question is on module 2 on the definition for reduction of current rates. We were looking at that as basically every payment that we paid out, we were counting it as a reduction of rate. So I'm noticing that that's not correct anymore.
So for reduction of rate refers to current bills. So if you made a payment that paid a restoration of services, but also paid for current bills, then in your quarterly reports, you probably reported it as such. In the annual report, those are separate. Those need to be reported separately. And yeah, so current rates, reduction of current rates charge refers to current bills, not past due bills, essentially.
Okay, we have to correct that. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on any of the modules? All right, well, I don't see anyone raising their hand, but I do want to remind everyone about the office hours. Please use it as an opportunity to come ask any questions. If you're starting to fill out the report and you want to ask questions, please, and you can't make the office hours, please email your program specialist and we're happy to set up a meeting with you. The tool is on our website and the action transmittal, oh, thank you, Rachel, she just posted it in the chat. Also has the link to the office hours and the report itself and instructions. The tool is on our website as well. And so please feel free to use that if it'll help. If not, it's not required. And we are here to answer any questions that you have and make sure that you get your reports in by January 31st to your program specialist and the LIHWAP reports email. All right, well, thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon. And we will see everyone later. Thank you.